Hello everyone, thank you for joining me for the video. I want to walk through a common problem that we all struggle with, and that is our recurring temptation. So in this video, I want to try to unpack this idea, those things that we have struggled with, maybe even for decades, but they're recurring temptations that come, and how are we supposed to think about that? That's what I'm going to talk about in this video. I had a friend come to me and ask me that question, and they really wanted to know if they were ever gained victory over the temptation that they have. And there are several things that you really need to consider regarding this subject of recurring temptation, and perhaps a great place to start would be the strategies of Satan. You remember what Peter said in 1 Peter 5:8? He said that the devil is our adversary. He is a legal enemy who slanders. In fact, the word adversary means legal enemy. And so it's a person who slanders like in a court of law. And so the devil's desire is to create tension between two people to drive a wedge. Now, the two people in this scenario are you and the Lord, or me and the Lord. And so the slanderer, this legal enemy in a court of law, is wanting to divide us, divide you between yourself and the Lord, or me, as I said. And so Satan is like a prowling lion looking for folks to bring false arguments. You must realize that Satan has diabolical plans for you. He is anti-God in every possible way imaginable. He is opposed to anything God desires to promote. Jesus talked about the devil and his minions as thieves and murderers. He said that they have come to earth to kill and to steal, to destroy. And so their job is simple: destroy God, destroy his children. In fact, you can read about how Christ talked about the devil in John 10:10. And so part of the accusation when there's a temptation that comes to you, part of what you feel is from the spiritual realm. But this is what I want you to know. The devil cannot get your soul. Now, he can immobilize you. That is his plan B. Because he can't get your soul, he will try to immobilize you, which is why he's going to try to hit you with his best shot. Discouraging you is the next best thing to rendering you useless. Now, you'll see this strategy with the temptations that Satan put before Jesus in Matthew 4. He could no more stop Jesus from being God in the flesh than he can stop you from being a Christian. If you are a Christian, I will assume for the sake of this, what I'm sharing with you, that you are. But that will not stop him from taking his shots. He can't revoke your salvation, but he can paralyze you. I said immobilize earlier. He wants to paralyze you from actively following Jesus. And so my question to you is, do you understand that the nature of the battle, it consists, one, of Christ's victory that he won on the cross, and your active engagement. Now, I know temptations are real, and I also realize that they can be mysterious to understand. The Bible does not reveal all the aspects of the enticements that lure us, but there are a few things that you can learn. And so with the strategies of Satan fixed in your mind, let's move forward. Here are three truths that I want you to nail down. The first one is, God will not tempt you, but he will permit temptation. I want to talk about that in just a moment. The second one is, the evil spirit world will seek to lure you into temptation. And then number three, your heart will always desire sinful things. And so Satan has a strategy, but it's also important that there's another player in this game. There's another problem player in this scenario. That's you and me. Ever since Adam did his deal in the garden, when he fell in the garden with Eve, humanity has had a desire to be like the devil. The essence of Adam's sin was unbelief. Unbelief is our way of saying, I don't need God. I know better. And even as regenerated people, we are not sinlessly perfect. You know this. There continues to be a desire within us to live out a lack of submission to the Lord. For example, let me give you an illustration. Think about the last time you were frustrated, irritated, angry, ticked off, or whatever word you want to substitute for sinful anger. At that moment, you were acting out your unbelief. You chose to get angry. Somebody was annoying you. And in essence, you were saying, I don't need God. I know better. I'm going to do it my way, not God's way. Anger is one of the most common ways that we reject God. And that's why I'm using the illustration. Sinful anger is functional atheism in the raw. It is more like Satan than Christ. Because this is what we can do, we can walk away from the Lord in those moments of anger, for example. God knows that we can perpetrate such evil. He will allow things in our lives to remind us of who we are and who He is and how much we need Him. That's why I said earlier that God will not tempt you, but He will permit temptation in your life. You remember He did this for Job in Job chapter 1. And so if you understand why temptation happens, as I have outlined thus far, rather than fixating on your weakness, rather than fixating on your temptation, you should fling yourself on the Lord. Sinful attractions make sense for fallen people, but you can redeem the temptation. Think about the temptation like a ticket. The temptation comes, it is a ticket. You take it in your hand. I have the temptation. What about if you redeemed it? You can use it for God's glory as He teaches you to turn to Him each time it comes. If you discern your temptation as an opportunity to trust God, the temptation is not necessarily a bad thing. I know it's bad. I know it can be frustrating at times, but in this context, the temptation could be a way to accomplish progress in your sanctification. Maybe you can flip the temptation on its head and you can use it redemptively. Let me give you 3 illustrations of how you can use the temptation to make progress in your sanctification. Number 1, the temptation reminds you that you're not God. You're weak. You are not God. The temptation not only reminds you that you're not God, the temptation teaches you to fling yourself on God. It reminds you, it teaches you, and then the temptation permits you to display His power through your weakness. Now think about these 3 truths. By the way, if you want to get the script of what I'm sharing with you, it is below in the video. There's also a link to where you can go and listen to the podcast and read the full article on our website, and you're welcome to do that. But think about these 3 truths. How can you own them? What specific ways can you begin to change your mind about your temptations by making these 3 truths yours? Perhaps you may want to jot down a few thoughts. It would be great if you would share them with a friend. That would be useful. The evil spirit world will seek to lure you by tempting you to sin, but you don't have to yield to it. When the ticket comes, when you're tempted, when the devil and his minions are pressing in, and you even feel a desire within your own heart, like say with anger, your reaction to temptation is not your strength, but God's. Fighting temptation is not supposed to be your job. This is God's job. You have divine power to win this battle. You're not supposed to fight like humans, the way human beings fight. You remember what Paul said in 2 Corinthians 10:4, that we have divine weaponry, that we don't fight as human beings. And so when the temptation comes to be angry, the human means, the human method of fighting would be to give in to your anger. But you have divine weaponry. The evil demons of the spiritual world would love nothing more than to create a stronghold to capture you. And that's how these temptations can become habits in your mind, because you keep yielding to it rather than flinging yourself on the Lord. And so I understand why a person would come and ask, would my recurring temptations wear me down? Well, the answer to that question is they can. If you don't learn how to resist the devil, which really brings you back to not understanding the nature of the battle. There's a spiritual warfare that's going on. There are temptations that lure us, as James talked about. And so if you try to fight him under your own strength, it'll not only weaken you, but it will accelerate the desire to yield to sin. Now, eventually, you may give up the fight. Some may even walk away from the faith. You'll hear people talk about this sometimes. They will say, I tried Christianity and it didn't work. Sometimes when you hear that, what they're really saying is, I didn't know how to fight this fight. They didn't understand the very things that I'm sharing with you right now. Christians who do not access the divine weaponry the Lord provides for them will not practically live out their faith. For these believers, sin may overthrow their faith. It could shipwreck their lives. This reality is sobering. You are in a warfare, and so am I, no doubt. James talked about it this way, the internal part of our struggle. He said each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, when it has conceived, brings birth to sin. And sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death. And so we have the satanic spiritual warfare. We have this internal warfare within us. Let me speak plainly. Your heart will always desire sinful things. Recurring temptation, however, and it's important that you know this, it does not necessarily mean you have not changed. It doesn't mean that you're not a Christian. It doesn't mean that you're not progressing in your sanctification. What it means is you are in a war, and the enemy is relentless. And there will never be a season in your earthly life where you won't encounter sinful fascinations for something. But listen, your fallenness, my fallenness, our temptations, it does not have to immobilize you. What you don't want to do is to become immobile, paralyzed. You see, when you become paralyzed, what you have is a complicating temptation. It plops down on the recurring one. And so you have this temptation that's here, whatever it may be. Let's say anger. I've used that earlier as an illustration. And then you yield to this stronghold that you have in your mind that, woe is me, I just will never get this right. This is the temptation again, and now it plops down on top of it, and now you have the temptation, plus you have this stronghold of your mind that hinders you, and you play it over and over and over in your head. And that is what Paul called in 2 Corinthians 3:6. He called it a stronghold. Ongoing temptation, here's what it means. It means you are alive. It means that you are well. It means that you are in the battle of your life. It means God is busy working with you, working in you. It means you're not dead yet. And it means the enemy sees you as a threat. It also means the Lord desires to keep you focused on Him. Your struggles with weakness are part of the process of the Lord strengthening you by His grace. Think about this. Christians do not typically think about the purpose and timing of grace. When do you receive grace? When you need it. At the time of temptation. You're about to take the ticket. You're at your weakest point. It's at the moments when you are weak that you need God's empowering favor. You need God's favor, not yours to resist this, but you need God's favor. And so those moments when you are weak, the time for grace is a tempting moment, and the purpose of grace is when you are at your weakness. And so rather than seeing your temptation as accompanying weakness and the accompanying weakness as a downer, change your mind about the matter. Maybe the Lord is using that moment to make you strong through Christ. You remember what Paul said in Philippians 4:16, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's really similar to when the Lord saved you. Again, assuming that you are a Christian, you remember when God saved you. You were weak, you were helpless. The weeds of sin had wrapped you, kind of like Jonah when he was in the belly of the whale. And you felt the hopelessness of your inability for self-rescue. You could not get yourself out of this. You could not save yourself. And so rather than continually focusing on the depravity, or in the case of this video here, rather than continually focusing on the temptation, what did you do? You cried out to God. What happened? God's power came and God regenerated you. It's God's kindness to you to allow negative things into your life. It's God's kindness to you at the point of salvation. Think about it. It's God's kindness to you at the point of salvation to back you into a corner to where you cannot escape. And He brings you to this weak moment. He permits you to be at this broken moment in your life. So at that moment, it's the time for grace, and you cry out to God and you receive His grace. It is God's kindness. And the temptation should motivate you to recalibrate your thoughts. When the tempting comes, there is a call on your life to decide between good and evil. There's a crossroad here. On one side, you have God. On the other side, you have Satan. You're stuck in the middle between the two. Temptation comes into your life. You are weak. The spiritual forces are bearing down on you. As James says, there's a luring within our hearts. And so now this interaction of this temptation, you don't want to self-rescue here. You can't redeem yourself. You can't fix this problem. You can't resist this. And so what you do is you have to decide. You lurch to the grace that God provides, or you'll become overcome by the evil. And so Paul's words are instructive when he thought about the strengthening effect of grace. This is in 2 Corinthians 12. You know these words well. He said, God said to me. See, Paul had a thorn in the flesh. He was at this moment of weakness, and he could not self-rescue. And so he was at the intersection. He had to decide, will I be overcome by this thing that is happening to me, or will I lurch for grace rather than being overcome by evil? And so as he tells us about this in 2 Corinthians, he said that God said to him, my grace is sufficient for you. This is the Lord talking. My power is made perfect in weakness. You can apply that to yourself. God's strength is perfected in your weakest moments. And then Paul said, therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, with insults, with hardships, with persecutions and calamities. You could also say, I think it would be okay to the text to say I can also be content with temptations, because I know this is a part of my fallenness, but now I have flipped my temptations on their head, on its head. And rather than being overcome by it, I'm lurching for grace. And then Paul said, for when I am weak, then I am strong. Now, this is my call to you. Don't bemoan the temptation. See it as your opportunity to cooperate with God by appropriating His grace in the moment of your weakness. And through your inability, you will experience strength. You will experience power, the power of the gospel. Your cooperation with the Lord will defeat the enemy. It will fortify you. It will put God on display in a really ironic way. Only God can use your sin or your temptation sinlessly. And when you understand this, The frustrating temptation that the devil means for evil will be for your good. How ironic is that? As it pictures the gospel. Christ dying on the cross was the wisdom and power of God. Though it looked disappointingly weak and foolish at the time as we stare at Christ on the cross, it looks like foolish, it looks like weakness, but that foolish and weak thing that was happening at that moment on Adam's tree was the strength and power of God. Your ongoing temptation does not necessarily mean you haven't changed. As I said earlier, you can make progress in your sanctification. Of course, if you keep yielding to the temptation, you won't change. Maybe you have not changed. And so the word in view here is not the word temptation. Actually, I would prefer that you focus on the word yielding. The temptations are going to always come, as I've been saying, but it's the yielding. And even though you may fall occasionally, it's your practice of getting up again and again until the temptation eventually it begins to lose its force in your life. Now, I realize that a lot of folks that come to our ministry, they feel isolated and they feel lonely and they don't have that friend. As I like to say, every Paul needs a Timothy, and it's like I don't have a Paul in my life. We can't be that in a real-time, face-to-face way, but if we can serve you, please let us know. We have free community forums on our website. It's accessible to anybody in the world. All you have to do is get your username and password, and you can talk to me, you can talk to our team, and we would love to walk with you through this. If you need more information, you could also reach out on our website. Now, for those of you who do discipleship, and you enjoy helping people through these struggles and you want more training, well, we do that as well. We have an all-online mastermind training course. It will equip you in biblical counseling. And if there is some other way that we can serve you, please let us know. Thank you so much for watching the video.